Welcome to Wolf's Watch. I'm Wolf. Today we got a great guest. You're not going to want to miss this. Grab something to write with. Bring your questions because we're always watching the comments over here. This is 21st Century Television, live and interactive. And today we're going to be talking with someone that can bring tips, insights into how do you take your business truly to scale it? How do you find that time? How do you find that expertise? We have George Mayfield with us. He's a veteran of the U.S. Navy, comes from a family of hardworking entrepreneurs, has been surrounded by the entrepreneurial life his whole life. George helps business owners uncover the real issues that are causing problems in their company. They monitor company health through key performance indicators and issue tracking. They also solve strategic problems with a fractional C-suite and vetted providers. So imagine having that high level C-suite talent that you need in order to really get to the next level. And his mission is to help business owners love their business again. Please welcome George Mayfield. George, thanks for being with us today.
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
I am so excited about this because you are doing something that I love, the fractional C-suite concept. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but I wanted to ask, just diving right into the deep end, what does it take right now? What do you see happening in the current economic environment? And what are going to be, if you could share one or two of the key shifts in perspective that are needed to really be able to thrive in today's chaotic environment?
Yeah, there is no question about it, but there is so much uncertainty out there in the world right now, and it's really only just going to get worse. We had, of course, the COVID, we had the Great Resignation, and so what that did is it created a bunch of change, a bunch of churn in the economic environment. And I think what we're going to see, we're hearing a lot of people, we're already starting to see there's a lot of layoffs happening. And what normally happens during a lot of layoffs is people start companies. So entrepreneurs start picking up the ball. They start to try to find work as an entrepreneur. They start to do the pick up gigs. The gig economy starts to pick up. So I think what we're going to start seeing is a lot more availability if these small and medium-sized businesses are poised to take advantage of that. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity to take some of that talent from people that have been laid off or people that are starting these businesses and utilize that and take advantage of some of that uncertainty and some of the things that can happen during that time.
Yeah, because the more uncertainty, the more chaotic it gets, it seems, the more opportunities there are.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you got to take advantage of that opportunity.
Absolutely. So that means that from an established business standpoint, there will be more resources available.
Yeah. I believe
to help
so.
Scale up. And from an entrepreneur standpoint, it's a great time to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Counterintuitive, right? It's all the doom and gloom in the media. And it's like, you know what? Go start a business, man. This is, was it during the Great Depression? I don't know if it still holds true. For a long time, I heard it said that during the Great Depression, more millionaires were made. And that was when $1 million, not that it's anything to sneeze at now, but holy cow, it was a completely different lifestyle than $1 million delivers today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, that is a time to take advantage of things. And, your business could be operating right now. It could be just fine, but it may need to shift. It may need to change. And, not a huge change, but, just take advantage of the little things. And, now that we're going to have this, this churn going on in the market. There's a lot of things. If you just keep watch and be really agile, you can kind of pick up on those things.
Well, it's like Jeff Bezos made a statement, I think it was yesterday or over the weekend, that he recommends delaying big purchases and big financial expenses right now because of what he sees coming on the horizon. Yet at the same time, it's a good time to start a business.
Yeah. Starting a business doesn't have to be a huge expense. There's lots of businesses out there that don't take a lot to start up.
So. Well, especially, one of the great things about the internet, right? It's so much faster. It's so much easier, especially after the great lockdown of 2020. Now people are so much more open to, people working from, from home, working from a home office, not having a storefront, the huge expense that goes into that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big thing. But a lot of things too. If you notice during COVID, there was a lot of big businesses saying, the workforce is all going to start working from home. Everybody's leaving the offices, but you saw a lot of big companies were buying up real estate. So, they were seeing one thing out of one side of their, face, and another on the other side, they're, buying up some real estate and buying up office space. So, I don't know if I would take 100% stock in something that billionaire says like that, because there's things change, right?
But is it more from a startup perspective?
Mhm.
Is there more credibility, or is it less of a credibility hit to be operating kind of on a shoestring from home, as opposed when making a sales presentation, as opposed to, hey, come over to our big suite of offices that we're paying
Oh,
tens of $1,000s a month on a lease just so that we can impress clients,
yeah,
type
yeah.
of a
That's
scenario?
the other side of the coin is, yeah, I do believe that for the small and medium businesses, getting into an office, if it's not necessary, then that's probably not something I would chase. But if these larger companies were buying up more real estate, more office space, I mean, there's got to be some reason for that.
Yes, that it's an excellent point. Is what do
Yeah.
they know, or what are they thinking about that's not necessarily obvious at the moment?
Hmm.
Which I want to ask about something that's mentioned in your introduction
Yeah.
about key performance indicators. I'm a recovering engineer, so KPIs are near and dear to my heart. What what do entrepreneurs miss in key performance indicators? Because that's something where all too often it seems we measure what we can, as opposed to what really needs to be measured in order to have a handle on the health of a business or a process
Hmm.
within a company. Are there common, because you've worked with a lot of different businesses, have you
Yeah.
seen some common mistakes that you could share that to help us avoid?
Well, the most simple mistake that I've seen is, I do remember asking an entrepreneur if he looks at KPIs, and he's like, "Oh yeah, absolutely, we look at KPIs." And it's like, what kind of KPIs are important to you? And he's like, "Well, we look at our revenue every day." And I was like, "Okay," and that was it. They basically check their bank account every day. So I don't
Nice.
recommend that.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
not necessarily a KPI, but I think another thing that I see is entrepreneurs being consistent. So if you decide that these are the KPIs that are the pulse of your company, you should be consistent in checking that pulse. I mean, you think about it like an athlete, or your own health, right? So most of us probably aren't athletes, and we might step on the scale once a week, just because it's convenient, we're at home. But I mean, are we checking our blood pressure that often? Are we checking like all our vitals that often? But when we go to a doctor, that's the first thing to do is they check our vitals. Our blood pulse, blood pressure, our weight, height, all those things. But also, if you think about like an athlete, they're getting their vitals checked every single day, probably multiple times a day. And why is that? It's because their bodies are their business. They're making money because of their body. So they want to protect their body. They want to make sure that it is running in the most optimal way possible. So they're constantly just checking on those vitals. But a lot of times business owners, they don't do that. They don't realize it, or they just get complacent in their business and they kind of stop, or they stop being so consistent. Another time, like you kind of mentioned, they measure what they can. So, what kind of KPIs might a business owner look at? Obviously, finances are the first one, right? So, it's probably
Hmm.
why I had that one business owner say, we check our bank account every day. That's easy to do, but sometimes KPIs might need a little bit of math, or a little bit of, maybe it's a ratio or something like that. It's a little bit harder to,
Hmm.
to do, or to figure out how to do that.
Well, it's like the measuring the knobs that need to be turned in order to fill the bank account, so there's something to check.
Yeah, if you're looking at your bank
It's
account, that's you're behind the time. You need to know what's going to happen in your bank account, a month from now, or next quarter. So you need to know what's going to affect that.
Well, and how about timeliness of it as well? Because it
Yeah.
seems.
Well, some need to be looked at, on a weekly basis, sometimes monthly.
Mhm.
It just really depends. I mean, just like you're driving in your car, you're checking your speed a lot more frequently than you're checking the temperature of your oil, right?
Well,
Um,
and the speed tells you how fast you're going right now.
yeah.
It wasn't what your CPA told you 30 days later.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Sometimes it's just like sometimes there can
Well,
be a lag in the date, on the information that we're getting that could cause a problem.
sometimes you get pulled over and the cop has to ask you, how fast were you going back there? It's a little bit too late for that.
Yeah. Officer, I was going the speed limit when you pulled me over. It's like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm going 0 right now. Yeah. But another thing that a lot of business owners do is, and another reason why they become so complacent and inconsistent is because the business owner is, they put those KPIs in place. They're checking them. They might get a few weeks down the road before they stop checking, or they just, those
Mhm.
checks get fewer and fewer between, and then they just stop. But they're not accountable to anybody. They're looking at it themselves. They read a book. They had a business coach say,
Yeah.
"Hey, you need to go check your KPIs," and they put it in place. They got all excited, and then it just fizzles out, right? It's just like New Year's resolutions, but they're not accountable to anybody else. If they're the business owner, they may have a partner or whatever. A lot of times their partner is just as busy as they are, and there's
Yeah.
really no one to be accountable with. But if business owners would share that information and be accountable to others, it could be other business owners, it could be people in a mastermind, it could be people in a fractional C-suite, things like that. If you shared, and you had to share those KPIs in order to get advice, then you're going to be more accountable, and you're going to be more consistent, and you're going to watch it, and then it becomes a habit at that point.
Mhm. Well, and you mentioned the C-suite.
Mhm.
What is really the purpose of a C-suite or board of advisors or a board of directors within a company? It seems like that sometimes it seems kind of gray in terms of
Yeah.
what are they really there for?
Well, what I like to try to tell business owners is to stop thinking like an entrepreneur and start thinking enterprise. So, an enterprise company, the people that are ran by, the greats, the great people that have done great things in their industry, great things for the company, great things for the economy. They work for enterprise. They may own that enterprise company, but they work for it. So they have a board of advisors that they are relying on to help be accountable. So they're looking at these KPIs like as a team. So a fractional C-suite is kind of the same thing, for those smaller businesses, where you can have an IT expert, HR expert, finance, sales and marketing, and operations. That basically covers all the bases there. But if they're all looking at this business and looking at those KPIs and the vitals of that company, and that business owner is being accountable to share that information with their C-suite, they can help guide them, because a C-suite has been there. They've worked in these larger organizations. They know what it takes to get where you are. And of course, we all know it's a lot easier to look in the past on what you have done and what would have done better, than it is to try to think about the future and what you should be doing better. So using that C-suite, to kind of help vet your ideas and make sure that your business is on track to get where it was going, just someone to be accountable, or a group of people to be accountable to, it almost guarantees success, because they're going to be able to pick you up, from whatever problems you're dealing with, and help you through that situation.
But so let me play devil's advocate a little bit though.
Yeah.
I read a lot. I've got a lot of experience with what I'm doing. I can figure it out,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I
Sure.
don't need a C-suite. I didn't start my business to work for somebody else.
A lot of business owners do that. They put themselves on an island, and whether it's ego, or they just don't have time, or they just don't know what they don't know. I mean, again, you're one person. You can only know so much. So, a lot of times, you were really good at something, and that's why you started that business,
Mhm.
or maybe why you took over a business. but to grow it and scale it to the next level, unless that's something that you've done just hundreds and hundreds of times, even the people who've done it, they still have a board of advisors because they know that works, right?
Yeah.
It's just, human nature. It's better to work as a group, as a herd, and put yourself in a room full of smart people. And, we've heard it said before, don't be the smartest one in the room, right?
Oh,
And
yes.
so,
I have
you
no
know,
problem not being, that's easy for me to do. It's, well, and also though, LeBron James has a coach and a team of people around him for both the business side of what he does and in the athletics, the technical side, his expertise as a basketball player. Same thing with Tom Brady in football.
Right. Every world leader out there has their advisors that they talk to. I can't think of a single person that's done great things just by themselves.
So is it true that, like, for example, in Silicon Valley, the venture capital funds, when they fund a startup, like someone like a Mark Zuckerberg, where they'll put what they call, quote unquote, an adult in the room that knows the business side of it because they've, like you're saying, they've been through the trenches?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've worked with a couple of organizations like that they wanted to put a team of people in place to help that business succeed. That's not them. They want to put their money in there, but in order for them to make the smartest investment possible, they don't want to bet on one guy. They want to bet on a team. And there's the whole team mentality, weakest link. There's tons of things there that we should all know this concept. Yeah.
Well, and you've been successful as an entrepreneur yourself as well.
Yeah. So far.
And you come from a family of entrepreneurs. I found that is interesting. We were getting to know each other. I found that fascinating because a lot of people don't have that influence and perhaps have a different perspective.
Yeah, it's a really cool story, actually. I always tell people, like, I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs, and it was a small town entrepreneurs. So we're talking, I had welding, and I mean, I had one business owner who cuts horses, which that's not a bad thing. It's just training horses. I don't know why they call it that. It's nothing cruel. But
cutting them out of the herd is the first thing I thought of. But
yeah,
I've been around people that run ranches.
yeah.
So as you're watching this, don't be calling ASPCA. It's not, it's not hurting
not
them. It's just a term, it's a technical term.
Let the razor blades out.
Yeah,
but I mean, growing up, my father had a job, and he worked at a manufacturing plant. He was the chief engineer, but he would get off work at 4:00 in the afternoon and immediately go work on the house. He would be building cabinets, putting on a roof, painting a house, doing plumbing, doing electrical work. And 9 times out of 10, I was right there alongside him. So I learned how to do all these things. And my dad always taught me, like, never hedge all your efforts into one thing. Like, even though he had a job, he also had a business. And, recently, my wife and I do a lot of camping. And recently we went to one of our most favorite places in Texas, in North Hill Country, is the Granbury Glen Rose area. And over there is a town called Hyco, which is pretty small. And then near that, there's another town that's not even on the map. You really have to Google it to find it. And it's called Claret, Texas. And it used to be called Mayfield Switch. So back when Texas was founded in that era,
wow.
my family founded a town around a train station, where the train would come in and they would trade goods with all the farmers around there. And then, at some point, the train kind of stopped running, and, it kind of dried up there, and they ended up changing the name. And the story is, that my family is usually pretty humble as well. And, they didn't want the town, to be named after them. They're like, let's just kind of calm down on that a little bit and let's rename the town. And so they were having a meeting in the general store, and somebody was sitting on a box of Claret soap. So they renamed the town Claret.
Wow.
Yeah.
What do you want to call the town? Well, I don't know. It's like, how about Claret? That sounds good.
Yeah.
Next order of business.
Yeah. But we visited that town just a few weeks ago, and and I was talking to my associate that I took out camping with us for a company retreat as well. And we were kind of walking around, the Hyco and Claret area. And I was like, man, there's a lot of businesses in this area that are still run by my family, people that I'm related to, at least distantly.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
incredible.
So it's kind of in my blood, and I tried to fight it.
That's good.
I had a professor in college. I was taking an entrepreneur class, and the biggest thing I learned in that class is that being an entrepreneur is very risky. It's very hard. It's very hard on your family and all that kind of stuff. And I would look at my wife, and I thought, man, I really don't want to put her through all that. And maybe it's better if I just go work for somebody, get off work, and then we can just enjoy life. And I fought it. I would go to work and I would work for somebody, but I still worked just as hard like I was an entrepreneur because it's just in my blood. So I would be here working on the couch while we're movies playing, and I'm still working, and I'm trying to, make things better for our clients, and just working on weekends and just going the extra mile and a half, like all the time. And I just could not turn it off. So I tried to fight it, but I mean, entrepreneurism is just in my blood.
Well, but you took a detour to the Navy.
I did. Yeah.
Thank you for serving.
Oh yeah, of
I
course.
appreciate that.
I appreciate it.
That seems a little different from the entrepreneurial path, though.
Well, yeah. But I was third generation Navy. So my grandfather was a coxswain's mate in the Navy. So if you ever watched the movie like Saving Private Ryan, those little boats that they're taking ashore, he would drive those. So he would drive those boats, take the Marines ashore, and then turn around and go get more Marines and bring them back to the shore again. So
my dad did that. Guadalcanal.
Yeah.
It was first wave. Guadalcanal bringing the Marines in.
Yeah. So I really wish I'd gotten more stories out of him before he passed.
Yeah.
But and my father was also in. My father was a machinist in the Navy, and he told a lot of stories. And the thing I liked about it was the machinist is the guy on the ship. It's like MacGyver. You can fix anything. Everybody's coming to you to fix their problem.
Yeah.
So everybody owes you a favor. And I was like, that sounds pretty cool. I would like that. So I joined.
So the title's different than what we would see in manufacturing. It's like machinist, you're pretty much on a machine. You're working some equipment all day long.
Yeah, no, we made parts. People would come to us with like this broken, crumbled gear and say, I broke it, fix it. And we would have to, figure out what those measurements would have been and if it wasn't broken. And then, there's a lot of math and stuff like that involved. And then we would cut out the gear, make the pump shafts or whatever it was, and, get the machine running again so that the ship could be fully functional.
Wow.
Yeah.
Real life MacGyver. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'd imagine you have to scrounge sometimes too. You're, especially deployed, you're on a ship in the middle of the ocean. Man, it's not like you can run down to the corner of Walmart and pick something up that wasn't in inventory.
Yeah. We had to be a little bit, creative sometimes, but it wasn't that bad because the ship I was on was fairly large. It was a smaller carrier, an amphib. So we had tons of metal stock and whatever. I mean, we were making stuff for fun all the time too. So it wasn't too bad.
Nice. Now, did that experience help prepare you for entrepreneurial life?
Well, yeah, in a couple of ways. So of course there's the leadership aspect. So, anybody that goes in the military, like, what it's like to be a leader, even if, sometimes you just take turns being a leader over something. I mean, even if you're in boot camp, that day you're in charge of the bathroom being clean. And, if it's not clean, like, it's up to you and you're the one that gets in trouble. Everybody gets in trouble, but, it's because you didn't lead them. So everybody learns about leadership and experiences leadership. And, but I had a really unique experience, actually. So, I oftentimes complain that, I was really good at seeing inefficiencies, and I would try to make suggestions to make things better. And most of the time that fell on deaf ears because I, was just enlisted. I didn't have the power to, elicit change in the military. But there was one time where I was put in charge of a temporary team that they put together to go and look at the maintenance, all of the damage control maintenance that have been done on the ship, and kind of categorize everything, just make a list of things that, really need to be fixed once we get back home and go into the shipyards. What needs to be replaced? What do we need to pay contractors to fix? And so me and a small team of people went around the ship and we made up that list. And then I started looking at this list and looking at the data, and I thought, some of these things that need to really be fixed, some of them make sense because, it's outside of the ship, it's getting a lot of sea weather and things like that. But sometimes it's in an office. Why is this broken this bad? Like, why is the condition of this, emergency lighting or something like that, like this bad? And so my idea was that the people that are in some of these spaces had more of like an office or intelligence level job, and like fixing things wasn't really their skill set. So I went to, there was one particular chief, and I do not remember what his name was, but we all called him Chief Beaker because he was very tall and skinny and had crazy hair.
I love how people get nicknames.
Yeah. Yeah.
What?
And
I look like Beaker from the was it Muppets?
The Muppets, yeah. So he was a really cool chief, and he was really close to retirement. And but I went to him and I told him that this is what I'm thinking, and he's like, well, what should we do about it? And I was like, well, I think we could train people how to just do basic maintenance. And he's like, that's a good answer. And then that was it, right? For a while, I thought, okay, it was, whatever. And I think it was a few weeks later, at some point, I got called back, and I was put in charge of another team to put together a training program. We trained by doing. So we took people from all the departments all over the ship, just one person from each department, and we set about training them how to do basic maintenance. So this is what rubber looks like when it's going bad. This is the kind of lubrication you use on this kind of metal versus that. Various stuff like that, turning a screw the right direction. So we put together this team, and we actually went around the ship and kind of taught them by doing. So we took some of the spare parts that we had, and we kind of cannibalized some other parts to fix things. And, it became like I started reporting directly to the captain, and I found out that chief actually went to the captain and told him my idea, and the captain said, do it. So I was actually reporting its progress to the captain, and I was blown away one time whenever we got as much done as we could. And our list had, we made a pretty good dent in that list of things that needed to be repaired. And I remember, basically the equivalent of a CFO of the ship, he said, you know what you've done here? He goes, you've shaved off millions of dollars, because we were going to be in the shipyards and all the costs of the shipyards and the contractors that have to come out and fix these things. You shaved off millions of dollars by just getting this little bit of stuff done.
Wow.
And I was an E5. So doing something like that, I was like, wow, I have to do more of this. And
yeah,
I think that's really got me thinking. I was like, I can stay in the Navy, and I can be enlisted. I mean, I could try to be an officer or something, but I'm still only going to get so much change. And but I'd always think back to my family and the entrepreneurs that I grew up in, and the small town. It's like, I'd see a lot of them like, start businesses and fail, and start businesses and fail. And it's like, I want to help them know what they don't know. So I decided to get out. I went to college. I got my MBA, worked in project management for a while until I saw my opportunity to start my company. So yeah, I would say, the military did help me, with my entrepreneurial endeavors, for sure.
Well, and it seems that would help with ship readiness.
Yeah.
When deployed too, by having a broken, sort of the broken windows philosophy, to crime fighting, but applied within our businesses, within a ship. In this example, a broken light switch may not seem like much until there's the moment that it's the switch that's really needed, because something bad's going to happen if it doesn't work.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right. If it doesn't turn the light on in a critical room at a critical time, and just that general, does that affect mindset of the crew, the team as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Not only that, but and especially back to what we were talking about earlier, and what's going on in the world right now, and what's going on in the current business environment. Um, you need to be able to very quickly act on certain things. So,
Hmm.
one of the things that I do with my clients is we assess their, risk mitigation, levels. So,
Okay.
to what ability are they able to mitigate risk? Like, are they carrying the right kind of business insurance? Are they, carrying the right amount of business insurance? Like, do they have, emergency contacts for, whenever something goes on, something goes wrong. Do they have secondary suppliers if this supplier isn't able to work with them anymore? Instead of scrambling at the last minute, have something in place. What sort of risks might they have with their employees? Are they relying on one particular employee for a certain role? And if that employee quit or something happened to them, they're kind of wondering what to do. How do I replace that guy? He knew everything.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of that I help business owners with as well, just
Well, I
mitigating the
think
risk.
2020, the great lockdown in 2020 put a fine point on that.
Mhm.
It's easy. Like I live in Southern California, and disaster preparedness is imperative. We have
Yeah.
earthquakes, we have crazy weather, we
Hmm.
have mass riots on a 25 to 30-year cycle that just things happen, right?
Yeah.
So particularly if nothing else, just for the earthquakes, to have a preparedness plan in place. What are we going to do? What happens if people can't get into work? Because it's bad enough that it disrupted freeways, which we saw in what was it, 1991, 92,
Hmm.
where some of the freeways were down. And what are we going to, if we have people injured at work, or it's in the middle of the workday and now we're isolated like an island because emergency services can't get to us for a couple hours or a couple days. But yet 98% of the businesses, I would guess, don't have that. Now all of a
Yeah.
sudden in 2020, as a very successful hotelier that we both know had said, he goes, in the hotel industry, we plan for cash flow issues, but who would think that you would get in a situation where you have zero cash flow for 6 months?
Yeah.
What do you do? Or something disrupts the supply chain, and there's you have something that's coming in from China or another foreign country, but guess what? No ships are coming for a month, and then when they get here, they're going to be backed up in the ports,
Hmm.
kind of a
Yeah.
thing. Larger issues that hopefully have got people focused on it and going, what's your disruptive? What are you going to do if things get disrupted?
Yeah. That's a great point. And that's one of the reasons why I work with business owners in the way that I do, and putting together that C-suite is because we also talk to other business owners. We bring in that other information as well.
Yeah.
And what could be bad for a business in this particular case, could maybe shift, and because there's something else going on there, some other opportunity that they could take advantage of. And it's kind of in who, like, there, you still have something of value, and how could that be utilized maybe in a different way?
Like
That-
shifting over to making uh, hand sanitizer.
yeah.
Well, several companies around here did that. They're going, okay, we can't do anything else, but guess what? There's a big need for hand sanitizer. A couple of them jumped on it. And
Yeah, absolutely. Some of that hand sanitizer though was the worst.
well, not saying it
Some
was
of
the
it
best,
didn't
but
smell
just as
so
an example,
great. Yeah.
or shoot, a company that I was familiar with, they had a big challenge with one of their biggest customers,
Mhm.
and there was a tradition within their industry and how stuff gets shipped. They served the construction industry.
Right.
And it's like when it gets to the connector parts, they go in bulk. So they just throw them in boxes. Well, all of a sudden you end up with 200 people standing around because you're short something because of
Hmm.
mismatches. They didn't ship kits. So they shifted to delivering kits, which was a huge mindset change for them. But they had someone working with the company that came from outside the company, outside the industry, that said, you
Hmm.
know what, in this industry over here, this is how they do it. And here's the implications for the business. It worked for the customer, helped them repair a relationship they were having a problem with, but also ended up giving them a bunch of internal benefits as well.
Yeah.
And but it was but because there was that perspective from a different industry and how things operated, that they're able to bring that in instead of stumbling through it.
Yeah, it's
It seems that
agree.
the having C-suite talent like that, there's different dimensions to it. Is being able to get the experience from other industries,
Hmm.
but also in size too. Does that help with scale where things? It's like you build a business, things are going great. You hire somebody to be a sales manager, you're growing, and now all of a sudden, is that sales manager the one? Did they hit their level where it's like this
Yeah.
is great? They're good at $1 million a month, or $100,000 a month, but to go the next level beyond that, it's just not where they're most effective.
Yeah, you see that a lot. When people are applying for jobs and they're going from small business to larger businesses, that's one of the concerns that a lot of HR people have, or hiring managers in the enterprise environment is, they always want to know, have you worked in the billions, not in the millions, or not in the thousands, and because
Yep.
it is a different mindset, and to be able to take things to that different scale. Even if you're doing the same things, you have to worry about things in a different way. And depending on what it is that you're selling, you may have changes in the way that you're supporting your customers as well. How are you, providing, knowledge to your customers? If you're doing have an IT company, how do you build up your knowledge base, or how do you, how, can you scale the level of attention that you were giving customers whenever you had, just 100 customers, to whenever you have 1,000 or several thousands or a million customers? Like, you have to think about that in different ways, and you're not going to be able to scale that entirely. But you have to figure out a way to scale what it is that was important to you and your company, and scale that. So, if it is, like, when I was saying, the customer support, if white glove service is something that you want to scale, then you have to figure out a way to do that, whenever you have thousands and thousands of customers. And that may mean that you also have to raise your prices, or that may mean that you have to only get certain kinds of customers, or that may mean that you have to really make sure that your product is so good coming out the door that you don't have a lot of customer support requests.
Or even just to be able to be more effective at setting the company up so that as the owner, it's not a 100-hour week forever.
Yes. Yeah. Because if
Right?
that's the
Because
case,
getting started is generally brute force.
uh-huh.
You get some
Yeah.
revenue going, and it's like, okay, now how to, who do you really need on the team? How do you find the right people? How do you, how can I see 5 moves across the board when I'm not sure what board I'm on at this point? Because I haven't done this before.
Yeah. Yeah. That's another problem that a lot of entrepreneurs see is, if they don't start thinking enterprise, um, they find themselves working more and more hours. And then at what point do you find the time to train others to do what you're doing if you're already working, so many hours a week? And then, another problem is, the first thing that you should do after you create your business plan is your exit plan. And if your company is relying on you to work that many hours to keep that company, going, then even if you try to sell your company, you're really not going to get anywhere near as much as you think you are. Your company's just not as valuable because it's relying on the business owner. So you have to have systems and processes in place to make that company valuable.
Yeah, but George, I don't need all that. I'm going to die right here in the president's chair someday. Just slump over the desk. I'm good.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen that
I'm
before.
laughing with that, but it's. I have heard so few people talk about that over
Yeah,
the years. That, hey, look, when you're starting a business, how are you going to? What's your long term? What's your exit? At some point, you're going to want to retire, move on to do something else. If nothing else, let someone else management so you can get to the next. Entrepreneurs, right? There's always 5 more other things that we want to start.
yeah. And I mentioned secret sauce earlier, and a lot of times business
Yeah, yeah.
owners, I've asked a lot of them before. There's a few more questions involved, but basically I ask, what is your secret sauce? What makes you so good at what you're doing? And a lot of times they can't really answer it. They've gotten to where they are because of luck, but they're not really sure what they're doing that's quite different. Those you'll just say, "Oh, we're really good at customer support," or we just have some really good employees. Well, what does that mean? How do we scale that? How do we make that what it is without you in place? But yeah, thinking about what you're doing right now and how that makes your business be so successful in the now, and then what is your 3-year, your 5-year, your 10-year strategy. There's a lot of business owners that just don't think about that too much. I'm just trying to figure out what I'm doing this week, and it's not a good mindset.
Yeah, and or handing off to the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
I had talked to someone whose father had started a business that ended up being like the number 1, number 2 in their industry. Became, thousands of employees, and he eventually became a member of the C-suite, but never in the CEO's chair, not the chairman.
Mm-hmm.
And his dad was like, you're just not. He knew he wasn't the right person to play that role, and because of how that got handled, there wasn't some of the typical personality challenges that can happen there. Because like the third generation was, well, you're going to give us the business, right, Dad? And he's like, of course not.
Yeah.
It's like, no.
Well,
because they knew it was, how do they make it intergenerational for the family and set it up so that it can run and have that insight to go, you know what? My kid isn't the guy or gal. They can run it. They can play this role.
Yeah. I'm laughing because just the other day I was talking to a business owner who's he's building quite the empire, and we were having this conversation, and I asked him what he was going to do, and he says, "Well, I'm gonna pass the company on to my kids." And then it's like, well, statistically, like one of the things that's happening right now, there's a lot of companies that are, talking to valuation experts and exit planning experts, is that they thought they would give the business to their kid, but their kid doesn't want it. It's like, I don't want to do what you're doing, Dad. I want to go do my own thing. And that the amount of companies where that is an issue is just staggering. But I asked him, I was like, how are you going to get around that? And he goes, I'm going to have 8 kids. Like, he wants to have 8 kids. So he's just going to play the numbers game.
It's like in the farm family days.
Yeah.
Where you have big families because you need the help.
Going to have the brains to do it.
Or sometimes they want the lifestyle, but they don't have an interest really in the business.
Yeah, there's a lot of that too. Then they'll end up fighting over the value of the business and not the future of the business. So yeah, there's a lot of things wrong with that mindset of just I'm just going to pass it down like this is Game of Thrones or something. You're just going to pass it down.
Because
like
something that was a inflection point for me is I worked with a company once, and at the end of the engagement, my point of contact at the company during our out briefing started talking. It was a Japanese firm.
Uh-huh.
And we had this intense conversation about how they viewed the company 400 years from now, or from that date. Wow. So they were thinking out 400 years.
Wow.
And I was just like, I'm struggling with 2 business quarters.
Yeah.
400 years. It was because it shifted how they thought about the business. And I thought, man, I'm glad I'm not competing against for one thing. But it shifted, it's a large company, yet it shifted how they think about the business, because what can you really, it drove questions like, well, what can you really say could be true 400 years from now?
Yeah.
How are we want to be part of that? What is it that we could possibly, what is it that we do today that could set us, that could set us on a path? So once they created that, it framed a lot of their decisions in terms of, okay, we're doing this today. Is that consistent with where we want to be in that future? How does that fit in with that? So I don't want to bunny trail off onto all the stuff that came out of that conversation, but while we were having that conversation, it still gives me goosebumps because I was very aware in the moment of going, well, this is really weird. It's very rare. And there was so many gold nuggets about business in general and about their business in specific that came out of that conversation.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, you could do a lot with that. I mean, you have to think about, why would you even still be a company at that time?
Yeah.
If that's your thought, like, it's going to be something different. Like, you're probably going to be doing something completely different. But just thinking about, like, why would it still be a company? You know, and
Hmm.
so, you know that kind of goes back to, like, the secret sauce, I guess. Like, how would you still be doing
Yeah.
whatever that is with something else? If you have a certain mission and certain values, and that's what makes your company you, then what you do really doesn't matter. And if it's going to be something completely different in 400 years, then you're really just sticking with your core values and your culture and your mission. That's amazing.
And does that speak core values and mission?
Hmm.
Does that tie back into where you were talking about earlier with advisors and that C-suite perspective?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's a big part of what drives us as a company. And then
Mm-hmm.
when we are working with our clients, we want to know what their mission, values, and culture is. And then when we are vetting service providers that we recommend to our clients, we also we do pretty heavy due diligence. And a lot of our due diligence, it's a little bit of a pain for some of these businesses that want to be service providers with us, because we're asking them, we're drilling them on, like, what is your mission, what is your values, what is your culture? Because, sure, you can make my client a website, but does your mission and values and culture mesh with theirs? Because, that may be more important than the price, because everybody's competing on price. But, are you the right fit, for our clients? And, that's why when we're gathering service providers, we don't just get one person, and we don't recommend people based on, what kind of a kickback are we going to get or anything. A lot of times we kind of discourage that, as a matter of fact. But we really want to know that the people that we are recommending to our clients are, not just can they do the job, but are they the right fit? It's very important to us.
Mm-hmm. It seems that would make a big difference. It's not
Absolutely.
just, okay, here, slap up a website for us, but to have somebody really create something based on a deep understanding of what that business is about and also gets the value system as
Oh
well.
yeah.
And
Yeah. I mean, and it just makes the whole project work so much more fluid. I mean, keep talking about the military, go back to that. Everybody
yeah.
in the military, you have the same mission, values, and culture. I mean, it's drilled in you. And that's why, a person can leave one command and go to another and fit in just almost seamlessly. You can pluck a person out of boot camp and put them in the heat of battle, and they know exactly, how to talk to the other people around them. I mean, it's just so important. It makes those projects, like I said, they just run so much more fluid. I mean, if you're able to talk to somebody about what your website should look like, or why your books look a certain way, it doesn't necessarily, they don't even have to necessarily be in the same industry or have worked with clients in that industry before. But if you just talk the same language in your values and your culture, and your what your mission is, it's just so much better. The communication is just so much better between those two companies.
Does that tie into the challenges that we've seen over the last year or so with being able to attract the right people
Yeah, absolutely.
as well? I
Yeah.
mean, to create, because I heard somebody pose a question and I thought, wow, that's a great question. They were talking about a company. And they're like, well, why should someone go to work for that company? Because one of the executives is going about, they got these great job openings and they're paying above average for the industry and yada, yada, yada. And he's like, yeah, but why your company over someone else's?
Oh yeah, yeah, and there's a big shift, like the and I mean, I think it's always been that way, but
Hmm.
I think the shift in, what people are looking for in a job, as far as, like, what is the mission, and, what's the culture of this company. It's very important to people, and a lot of times it's more important than money. We talk Great Resignation. How many people left a cushy job to go, just to leave that company? They didn't even know what their next step was. I've met several entrepreneurs in the last year who did that exact thing. They left a nice job. They were making, over $100,000 a year or $200,000 a year. They left that job and now they started a business. They're really not sure what that business is going to look like, or they're still kind of looking for their next opportunity. But businesses really have to consider that, just because you have a really nice break room and you bring in, you have a pizza every, second Friday of the month or something like that. That's not really culture.
It's not foosball
Yeah.
tables and skateboarding through the office place and,
Yeah.
and pizzas every Friday is not. That's not. Oh wow. No. Well, back to KPIs, key performance indicators, right? It's the what's seen may look like the thing that's important, but that may just be a symptom or a result of something else that requires a deeper understanding.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Which
Very, very true.
brings me back to what we were talking about with fractional C-suite. Being able to get that deeper understanding. So I think as an entrepreneur, I would love to be able to afford to hire a CEO that ran a 300 person company, because we're not there yet.
Yeah.
That's in my business plan to get there, but man, that's expensive. How do I get access to that talent in a way that fits within the realities of cash flow?
Yeah.
As a 5-person organization or even a 20 or 25 person organization.
Yeah. And if you may be able to just hire one person, but then you're just hiring one other person. So, you're only 2xing, yourself. If you're the leadership and you just hire a COO or CEO, okay, so you got one extra person now. 9 times out of 10, that person is going to, start taking some time for you, taking some of, your time. So you have some extra time, but now they're in the weeds, so who's really leading the company and looking at, the trajectory and making sure that you have a strategy and that you're constantly working towards it and keeping your eye on it. Yeah, but if you could hire a team of fractional C-suites for less than the cost of hiring one executive, I'd say that's a pretty good deal.
Oh yeah, I think that would be beyond a good deal.
Yeah.
But what exactly does that kind of talent do for me as a business owner? I mean, how does that help me? I kind of get it, but especially going, okay, now I've got the operational and cash flow realities. How does that help me get to my vision of the future with the business
Well, the
faster
nature,
than if I'm moving on the trajectory that I'm already on? Just tough,
sure.
throwing more hours at it.
Yeah. Well, like I was alluding to earlier, usually a company will hire, a COO or CEO to work alongside that owner, or maybe there's some partners, and then they end up, you've got to fill in a 40-hour work week at least, right? So they end up taking on all these other responsibilities, and now they're answering phones, they're taking out trash too, they're doing all these other things, and they really can't step back and take that look at the company like that. And but if the nature of a fractional executive is that they're always a step removed, so they're not involved, they're not playing any drama games, they're not they're not in the weeds of the company, they're always a step back removed, and their job is to constantly just guide and direct and give advice. So they always have the best interest of the company at heart, just like the people that are working there. But they're a little bit more scoped out, so they're not trying to fill in a 40-hour week. They're only trying to provide that high level service, that high end service, a high level service of giving that advice and guiding them along in their projects and making sure that the company is going from where they are to where they want to be.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like that will also help me reduce my my learning curve time.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
It's like the faster I fail, the more I succeed, but there's a limit to that. And just to interrupt just for a second, we've got somebody that's joining us, and I appreciate it. I've been watching your comments. Your name's not showing up. Who is it? Who's talking to us about? Because this came up when we were talking about the culture. And it's like, what, free lunch isn't going to be enough to keep people at the company? Drop your name in too, because your name's not showing up. We want to say thanks. But that coming back to the accelerating the learning curve as
Hmm.
well.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, with my consortium, you get 5 C-suites immediately, and so yeah, your learning curve, like and we prioritize it. So we don't want to you eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? But a lot of companies aren't even looking at that elephant because it's so stressful, and they don't even know what that elephant looks like. So we help you show you what that elephant looks like, but we also tell you like these are the biggest bang for the bucks. This is where you should start. This is your priority. This is going to help you get to that next step, and then that next step, and then that next step. And so, yeah, the learning curve between that and the mastermind of being involved with all the other business owners. I mean, there's just so much brain power involved here that there's the learning curve is almost zapped out entirely.
And it's just I've got a crash of like 10 follow-up questions I want to ask around that.
Sure.
But it's just so it's an ability or an opportunity to really be able to bring in like the Super Bowl team
Yeah.
or the coaching that'll get you into the Super Bowl without having to pay
Yeah. Yeah.
that huge
Absolutely.
fee to have the top talent there. Or even
Mhm.
it doesn't seem like it's an adequate analogy because that's also, I mean, for C-suite, they're kind of players as well, right? They're not just really coaches in a
Yeah,
sense.
I mean, all the C-suite, they have their own business. They've had their own practice for a
Mhm.
while. They're experienced at consulting other businesses, and
Well, and let me grab that comment just for a second,
sure.
because being able to consult other businesses is a whole skill set in itself,
Oh yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
You
Oh
know,
yeah,
I worked
absolutely.
when I left corporate. I went to work for a consulting firm, and we had to shift policies. We were finding that we were taking people who were great technically at what they did in the corporate
Hmm.
world, and they were failing as consultants
Yeah,
because we had business onboarding problems, but there was a getting that deeper understanding. So what does it really mean to be effective in that role?
yeah, very true. I mean, a consultant knows that they're always selling. So whether you're selling your services, but even after that, you're selling ideas, and you have to. You may know what needs to happen, but you have to sell that to the business owner, and you have to make them understand. Back when I was working for a managed service provider before I started my company, um, our technicians would put projects on the board for some of our clients, and our clients would not really approve them. And so I started meeting with the clients, and I started asking them, like, or my technicians say that you need a new server. Your old server is sitting in a closet in the back of in the back closet in the floor. You've had it for over 10 years. You don't think you need to buy a new server? And he's like, oh, I mean, it seems like a pretty good idea, but I've also got these other things going on. And so it really took me working with that business owner to help them understand that there is an ROI involved with buying a new server so that it runs better. Your people that are logging into that server to work on QuickBooks or whatever is on that server, they're going to be able to work faster and much more efficiently. Plus, you're mitigating risk because you're getting that server up off the floor. We're going to put it in an actual IT rack, and so that if something happens to that, like all of your company information is on that server and it's just suddenly gone, what would your company do? And that business owner would be like, oh yeah, suddenly that's something I need to do like immediately.
Yeah,
Yeah,
especially
but
when the office, an adjacent office building all of a sudden has a water pipe burst or something, and you watch somebody else go through the havoc that causes.
yeah.
And it's like, oh, maybe we should get that off the floor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a great example on that helps me with the perspective of okay, so if we're able to get that kind of insight from the different functions that go into a proper C-suite,
Hmm.
that they could really make life easier for me as a business owner, but also accelerate growing the business.
Yeah, and it's super important that and I've met other business owners that have multiple coaches and things like that. But what's really important about the consortium is that we are all working together as a team, and
Hmm.
that's why I chose the word consortium. So we are a community of other businesses that are working together for your benefit. Myself as a COO, I I'm really good at herding cats. And, so I'm making sure that, while the CIO may be giving this, advice, that the CHRO knows what's going on as well. So if we need to, or sales and marketing, maybe we need to hire and train some salespeople. The HR person needs to know that as well, so they can work that into their plans. And it's all part of one big plan. And if you just have other consultants that are just hitting you from every side, they could be giving conflicting advice. And it's not that they are trying to go around that other person, but there's multiple ways to skin a cat, and you really have to coordinate that. And that's why we also bring in the vetted service providers, and we coordinate that as well, because we want to make sure that you're working with the best people, and we want to make sure that you're working in the best way, most importantly.
Yeah, that's huge. It's like identifying what you need as a deeper service, or need to outsource something, or buy in some, buy some more talent to be able to have a trusted source like that. So that's a tough decision. It's like, okay, I need that server, but who do I go to that I know that I'm going to get good value for my investment, and I'm not going to end up with not that I've made a recent computer purchase. If you've been watching Wolf's Watch for very long, but easy.
Yeah.
It's like, how do I know that's going to be the right thing and the right supplier? And then I'm not going to end up with something that only lasts me 6 months or a year when it should have lasted 5 or 10.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, we like to say, we are for businesses that can't afford trial and error. So, you've got, if a business owner, if you need a service, or you need to buy a thing, what are you going to do? What's every business owner going to do? First thing, they're going to go to Google, bookkeepers near me. Oh, they've got good ratings in Google. They must be good. And then they try them. And then, how long does it take to figure out your bookkeeper isn't a good one? It's usually when your, taxes are late, and, so, you can't afford trial and error. You just can't. You've been paying that bookkeeper for a year now, and, they haven't been, you trusted them, and, they weren't able to execute.
Yeah. Or it takes you 30 days to get it, and it's riddled with errors.
Yeah.
When it's just that's a personal bone for a personal point for me. It was a friend of mine, their business, it takes them 30 days to close the books. And it's like, I've worked with billion-dollar operations, global operations, that close their books in 72 hours. 72 hours is decision quality information on what's going on financially with the company. 30 days is like, oh my, how do you're going to get in trouble. It's going to cause you trouble at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or not having a bookkeeper that says, oh yeah, 45 days aging on your AP, accounts payable, receivable is good.
Yeah.
But that person doesn't understand variation, and you look at it and find out, oh yeah, guess what? 25% of your revenue is coming in 90 plus days. Right now, you and I hear that and we laugh, but this was someone that had, and they had, 20, 25 people on paper, substantial business.
Yeah.
But they didn't have and once they found right resources, they were able to speed that up. And it was amazing how much, just as an example of having a fractional CFO that can say, no, don't, here, beware. Yeah, there was a great sales presentation on that piece of software, but here's why that may not be the best for you. This may sound good on the bookkeeper, or this may sound good on what you're doing for financial KPIs, but here's what you need to understand that's deeper about that can make you feel like things are going well when they're not. The opposite can happen, where it looks like it's going bad when it's not, but it's usually more often it seems things are running well, and all of a sudden something really breaks, and you're like, oh crap, it's like, what's that thunk? Oh yeah, I think I got a nail in the tire, and you're turning on the freeway and 2 of the wheels fall off. You're accelerating kind of an error. It's like,
a lot of times business owners don't know what they need to, what they don't know, right? So they don't know what to look for. They don't know, well, what does a bad bookkeeper even look like? They had good reviews. They must be doing right.
Yeah. So the fractional C-suite brings in that perspective of what do you really need to know, backed with a lot of experience.
Yeah. What should you expect? Plus, with the KPIs, we're keeping an eye on the business every single month. And so, in the case of like a bad bookkeeper, if the KPIs we're not able to look at the KPIs every month because the books aren't ready, that's a pretty big red flag.
Well, and it seems that all business owners that are consistently outperforming their competition always seem to have some kind of accountability in place.
Oh yeah.
Like that, where they have, they have, as an owner, they report to a C-suite, or they have, they've got that group of advisors that they allow themselves to be held accountable by. So that, and it's not a boss employee kind of a situation necessarily, but still is that, hey, you know what? Tom Brady is accountable to his coach. His coach says, here, you need to do this, you need that, you need to practice on these things, you need to shore this up. It's like, okay, goes off, works with other professionals on making that change. Yeah.
Accountability goes a long way. We see it in sports, we see it in a lot of other things. Sometimes people say, again, we have New Year's coming up, so people talk about resolutions, and one of the best ways to make sure that you actually stick to your resolutions is to talk about what your resolution is, so that that everybody else knows, and that they're going to call you out on it. But if you especially have an accountability partner whose job it is to call you out on it, you're a lot more likely to actually reach your goals.
Well, I'm watching the time. We're running over. I appreciate that you were able to do this. I know you had a long day and it's getting late in the great state of Texas.
Yeah. Very great.
And, I appreciate that conversation on the power of the C-suite, but how to make that work for smaller companies. You need to have it when it's bigger, but to be able to start to develop that early on, man, it's a lot of power in that.
It's a change of mindset, and even Napoleon Hill, think rich, grow rich, right? You have to think that way. So you are an entrepreneur right now, but you have to think like enterprise. You have to think above. You have to think to the level you're trying to get to.
Absolutely. Love that. Got to think at the level that you're working to get to. Frameworksconsortium.com. As you're watching this, reach out, finish writing up your notes, and then reach out to George and his team and learn more about what does the fractional C-suite mean? How can that help with your company?
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, George. Appreciate it. And thank you for watching. Always glad to have you as part of Wolf's Watch. I'm Wolf, and we will see you on the trail.